I'll never forget a scene from maybe the 90s in the UK show Spooks, where an undercover cop gets her head shoved face first into boiling oil, right in front of her undercover partner. It was so sudden and unexpected, and completely horrifying. If I recall correctly, the BBC got more complaints for that episode than anything up to that point. And this was pre-social media outrage. I think even the tabloids stoked the pearl clutchers' fury. Joe Pesci's death in Casino. First, he had to watch his brother be brutally beaten to near death with baseball bats, knowing he's next. Then he got worked over with baseball bats. And then he was buried alive next to his brother. The narration getting cut off when Pesci gets whacked is such a genius editing choice. The final scene in The Mist. Different than the book. So much so that even Stephen King himself was impressed. And understated as hell for such a devastating scene. Frank Darabont is fantastic, and I'm still mad that we never got to see his vision of The Walking Dead play out. Regular Murphy in RoboCop. They just kept shooting him and he took forever to die. Murphy's execution. Clarence hitting Emil with the car and Emil bursting like a water balloon. The Corpo stooge gunned down by Ed 209 in the boardroom. In Pan's Labyrinth when son and father are killed after hunting for rabbits. With the wine bottle? When Adam Goldberg is slowly stabbed to death by that German in Saving Private Ryan. Right before the knife goes in, the German said, "Shush, es ist einfacher für dich. Shush, it is easier for you." Irreversible. The iconic fire extinguisher scene. Shit's absolutely brutal. That's the one I came looking for. Completely forgot the name of the movie, but when you mentioned fire extinguisher I knew that was it. Horrible, and that was seeing it once 20 plus years ago. Edit. I actually had to watch the movie just to see how those men came to that point. Come and see. Someone killed a Nazi officer? Let's lock the whole village in a barn and burn it down. Then drive off once the screaming stops, leaving a bedridden granny outdoors as the only survivor. I've said this elsewhere, but what really gets me is knowing that at the end as they're marching off to continue the fight that it is likely none of them lived long enough to see war's end. Floria included. When I was young, lean, maybe 5 to 8 years old, I was watching a car chase on the news with my family. The guy stops on an off-ramp, pulls out a shotgun and blows his brains on live TV. I will never forget it. It had to have been almost 30 years ago and I can still see it clear as day in my head. I'll never watch that, but I remember hearing about it. Isn't it part of the reason why live TV isn't technically live anymore? My other one would be Lust in Say 7N. Didn't even have to show it. It's the photograph combined with the trauma that you can hear in the surviving victim's scared, stuttered voice. The entire film Come and See. Specifically that young girl who dreamed of escaping the war and starting her own family one day. Just for them to come through her village, capture her, gang rape her. Then as she's seen walking out of the woods, blood pouring down from between her legs, her catatonic blank look and inescapable mental torture that you can see in her eyes. Just awful. I will never ever see that film again. Yeah, that shot with the blood was just fucking brutal, especially in the context of the movie. At no point in time did the protagonist get any kind of small victory that lasts for more than a minute. And then this girl from the beginning, who you kinda forgot about through all the horrible shit. The one symbol of kindness and innocence in the movie? Well, if you were a realist or a cynic you might already have guessed what would happen to her. But just in case you had any kind of hope, this movie leaves no fucking doubt. Jesus Christ. What a nightmare. Edward Delacroix in The Green Mile. That scene was more scary than any other movie scene I'd witnessed. Percy is such a bastard. Definitely found Shireen's death in Game of Thrones haunting. Fuck. I just found out I'd suppressed that. The scene in The Boys where she kills the guy that she's face writing. Edit. When Popclaw kills her landlord. Yeah. Also Robin's death because it's so shocking and how it's shown. I was like, I'm gonna have to watch this couple flirt for a little bit so that I get to know the characters, and then boom she gets popped in the middle of a line. Also Kimoko's brother seemed hurtful for some reason. And all the people in that building. And the head popping. Actually that whole show had a lot of crazy deaths. The Blood Eagle scene in Vikings. This is what came to my mind straight away. The stabbing scene in Zodiac affected me more than any other scene from any movie I've watched. It was just so realistic. I could feel their helplessness and futile struggle. What really makes that scene is the sound design. No music, all stabbing sounds and crying. The 100th episode of Criminal Minds when the whole team listens to Hotch's ex-wife being killed by a serial killer. But the best ever was watching Hotch beat his ass after. Nell's death in Haunting of Hill House, 2018, was particularly horrifying. Greater than. Her mother pushing her off the balcony of the house and leading her to a slow, agonizing death while she flashed back to all of her times in childhood realizing that she was the very ghost she's always been afraid of. The bent neck lady and her screams are haunting. Less than. The scene in question. https://youtube.be/vhkx4 newsoy closing parenthesis. The reveal of the bent neck lady is one of the biggest sucker punches in TV for me. Glenn Rhee's death in The Walking Dead. The comic version. https://youtube.be/_6WRMTRZH30 closing parenthesis disturbed me even more than the show, because in his final moments before Negan brings the bat down on his skull, his bravery falters and he begs for his life. And his adoptive daughter is there watching too. Not only that, but his brain is so much more damaged by the initial blow, that he only manages to shout Maggie's name after a series of brain-damaged stammers, rather than forming a coherent sentence. The episode of Criminal Minds where the guy would kidnap people, use a medieval torture device to dislocate all their joints, and then used their bodies as human marionettes. My favorite part of that episode, which to me makes it creepier, is the unsub as the same actor as Grima Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings. I think he played the character well. Not really brutal or a killing, but when Walter White let Jane overdose. That left me speechless. Damn. It is even worse when you re-watch it and realize he didn't just let it happen. He moved her from her side onto her back when he was shaking Jesse to try wake him up. There is another scene just before it where he is showing someone else how he puts the baby on her side after feeding so she doesn't choke if she spits up. He knew when he was watching her that his actions caused her to choke, and he chose to do nothing. The guy getting eaten alive by those worm things in King Kong 2005. Ah yes, the pit scene. Fuck everything about that scene, especially if you hate insects. A sense of dread and hopelessness truly felt in that scene cause you see part of their crew getting swept up left and right with no way out. Blackbeard's death in Black Sails. The keelhauling was intense. Such a badass scene. Anne Bonny getting a sledgehammer to the abdomen was another really intense scene. Hot Fuzz. Church tower falling on the head of the reporter. Blood everywhere. The image of it stuck in his neck has this horrible Silent Hill vibe that I still can't forget. Deadwood. Dan's fight with Hearst's enforcer. My heart broke for poor Dan for his reaction after the fight. The scene in Bone Tomahawk. Many thanks for the awards. Many apologies to folks who've only just watched it because of this post. For fans of gritty westerns, I also highly recommend Zoller's novels Wraiths of the Broken Land and A Congregation of Jackals. The way Craig Zoller shoots his movies makes it 10 times more terrifying than it already is. It just feels so real, especially with Kurt Russell's reaction to it. I highly recommend watching Brawl in Cell Block 99 Inches if anyone is interested in his other movies. OP on Sons of Anarchy. Or when Tig's daughter was burned to death. That was awful too. Maddie's death, the asterisk, who killed Laura Palmer. Asterisk reveal in Twin Peaks. It was so shocking I still remember it clearly 30 years later. For a show that's mostly remembered for its quirkiness, this scene was brutal as hell. Maddie was such a pure character, plus the situation was completely messed up. In the UK the show aired twice. Once during the week, just after the 9 p.m. watershed, and then a repeat showing till 11 p.m. on the following Saturday. The original airing received so many complaints that the violence was toned down for the second showing despite it showing at a much later hour. The fact that I was allowed to watch that as an 11-year-old still baffles me to this day.